I stood there on the porch of our beach cottage, my fingers cramped from holding the phone so firmly. The words that shattered Ryan's and my dreams were said by my father in a calm, collected voice. Too calm. "Emily, the beach home has been sold." Sucking hard, I choked. Something about his remarks slipped my memory. Sold, my brain is fried. The fact that the other party on the line said nothing suggested that he was well aware of his actions. It seems like Madison is in a jam again. A lot is at stake here. She is owed almost $200,000. There was absolutely no way out of this jam. It caught me off guard. My sole means of preventing a fall were my grip on the railing. That house was more than just real estate. It was the fulfillment of a dream, the result of 7 years, of late hours, hard labor, and faith in each other. We poured our emotions into that place, and our tales are now part of it, in every board and beam. In spite of our lack of warning, he went ahead and gave it away, in the absence of prior inquiry. I tried so hard to speak, but all I could manage was a whisper. Were our signatures not forged? He walked slowly and laboriously. Their next words were, "It was right that we acted." You don't go about using the house too much. The stakes could not be higher than when Madison's life is on the line. I could feel the temperature rising on my cheeks as rage, treachery, and loss crashed together. I sounded nervous. You were never asked. Not even you told us. What you took from us, you gave to her. Once again, nothing was said in response to my inquiry. It was our expectation that you would understand. When families rally behind one another, back at home, that term meant more to me when I was a kid. In that instant, it seemed like a knife. I shifted my focus to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. This house would be our legacy, and Ryan and I rode these waves when we first decided it would. It disappeared out of nowhere. It was all because my parents had once again played with danger to shield the one person who had managed to avoid punishment every time. I grasped it in that instant. This was no ordinary accident in Madison. I couldn't take it anymore. I should not have been surprised that my parents chose Madison above me. Another time. Deep down, they had always known. My parents presented me with a shiny red tricycle for my 5th birthday. I clearly remember shrieking with joy as I ringed it, my small hands firmly gripping the handlebars as if I had discovered an infinite wellspring of liberty. It was the first present that I can recall, desiring so naturally I wanted it fiercely. 2 days subsequent to that, it had disappeared. Madison took it by force, ignoring her youth and persistent unsteadiness. My fate was sealed the moment she said mine, pointing to the tricycle. "You were instructed by your mother. You're the big sister," in a firm but not cruel manner. "Emily, please give it to her." As a protest, I mentioned that it was my birthday. I remember my dad dropping down on one knee beside me, running his fingers through my hair, and murmuring, "Older sisters are responsible for that. Your offerings are substantial, and you ensure the safety of others." This was probably not the last time I felt totally ignored, but it was the first. When I started kindergarten, my grandma sent me a unicorn glitter pencil case that was just right for me. It had pockets for my crayons and a zippered closure, so it was perfect. Madison pleaded, pouted, and cried, until Mom came and got it after I showed it off for exactly 3 days. "Dear, I have an old one that you are welcome to use. Madison has not yet grasped the idea of sharing, but, my darling, she's still very young," Mom said. I knew I had to shrink quietly and softly, of course, to create space for her, but I succeeded nevertheless. I stopped asking for expensive presents when I was 9 years old. While I was in school, I saw kids signing up for dance classes, soccer teams, and piano lessons. I remember asking my mom once if I could go swimming, and ever since then, I've had a thing for water. But Mom always seemed to be staring at the sink when she mentioned it. Could we give it another go next year when Madison is older? We already had her enrolled in ballet and piano lessons. No following year was planned. The only extracurricular thing I did was tutor Madison. As she was nervous about a vocabulary exam, I was in the kitchen trying to do my math homework. My dad gave me a sidelong look before he eventually remarked, "Emily can use some assistance. We can complete your task later on." The time came when it was never. At every event, from recitals to birthdays to report cards, she was the life of the party. My memories of the 3rd grade spelling bee are very vivid. I worked on my abilities for weeks, placed first. Having a small award to present them when I returned home made my day. Nevertheless, Madison had hurt her knee that very morning when she tripped during recess. That night, my dad hardly glanced at my award. His whole speech was just that, "Be careful, she's had a bad day." Ultimately, I concealed the trophy under my bed. When I was in the gym, I ran a mile at a record pace. Madison sobbed throughout the parent-teacher luncheon, so her parents left early. At the time when my science class was selected to participate in the state showcase, they couldn't get time off work, so they turned down the invitation. Nonetheless, year after year, they found a way to fit in Madison's ballet recitals, school plays, and art displays. Even in the run-up to Christmas, it was obvious. Madison got an iPad one year. I gave them notepads and socks. Because of Mom, they were practical. I stopped boasting about my achievements when I was in middle school. In that case, why bother? Nobody noticed that I was promoted to student council. After winning an essay contest, I did absolutely nothing to celebrate. I neglected to deliver the welcome speech during my school's open house, even though I had been chosen to do so. Meanwhile, if Madison got a BS instead of an A, the house turned into a crisis center. Unlike you, Emily, she was always sensitive, fragile, and not as tough. I learned not to get in people's way while I was in high school. Working part-time saving money and keeping my concentration got me out of there. Leave that house, shaking off the shadow. I ended up in university, like my life depended on it. I studied textbooks night after night, applied for scholarships, and filled out applications. Suddenly, the idea crossed my mind that perhaps this time, when I eventually got into the University of Washington, my dream school, they would be so proud. Despite my informing them, Mom hardly raised her gaze from the burner. I thought that was cool. Did you hear that Madison was named to the honor roll? For supper that night, I went back to my house and found Madison's favorite dishes spread out on the table. Nothing was spoken about my successes. In fact, they were completely ignored. I could have eaten everything I wanted. Their brightest light was Madison, and it was my duty to help her out. Plus, I was completely worn out. I had completely forgotten about inviting them by the time I crossed the platform to earn my graduation 4 years later. They probably weren't going to show up anyhow. Still, the worst thing was overhearing my dad talk calmly on the phone that day, as if he hadn't just committed fraud. He obviously still doesn't care about what Ryan and I have achieved as a team. It seemed as if my own being was unimportant. Nonetheless, my position as that overlooked kid had long since passed. I went through a change. I was sick of being quiet. On the same day that I came dangerously close to drowning, I didn't expect to fall in love, but that was how it started. As a first-year student, I was able to leave Oregon in the first week of classes. I was still getting the hang of breathing on my own as I stood on the Santa Cruz coast alone with the waves and no one to talk to about it. Madison wasn't involved either. An advertisement caught my eye outside the Student Leisure Center. Experienced windsurfers welcome at Windsurfing Club. Anyone is welcome. On that fateful Saturday, I bravely dove into the Pacific in a borrowed wetsuit and battered sneakers, completely unprepared but determined. Perhaps it was the intense winds and relentless waves that had always attracted me to the water, but I couldn't help but be enchanted by it. I must have flipped the board a dozen times before someone yelled from the shore after I tripped and fell multiple times, getting saltwater burns on my eyes, throat, and pride. Your struggle against the current is palpable. I looked up and saw him as I squinted in the sun. Thank you, Mr. Cooper and Ryan. The club captain, a senior who looks like he was molded from a mix of surfboard wax and ocean air, caught my eye first for his smile, not his body. I didn't get the impression that he was trying to taunt me. He seemed unconcerned and deliberate. As I jogged into the waves, he reached out and said, "Everyone wipes out at first." I felt utter humiliation for a moment. "You are doing an amazing job." I had no clue those words would mean so much to me until today. I learned how to shift my weight with the man's help, how to sense the wind, and how to be cool when I feel like I'm losing control. Over the following several weeks, I got better, stronger, and less limited. In spite of everything, we made progress. Standing calmly in the middle of a storm, Ryan seemed engrossed. I told him what I wanted out of life, and we spent many late-night meals and hours on the lake, talking about dreams, disappointments, and family. He was the one who spotted me first. In my capacity as Madison's sister, no, while avoiding the stereotypical nice girl act. Only Emily is allowed. A couple of months later, we were fast friends. We built our own little universe out of ramen noodles and laughter. He taught me how to drive a stick shift, and I taught him how to economize while juggling 2 part-time jobs and praying. After finishing college, I received a solid risk-free offer for a job in corporate marketing. There was another idea that Ryan had, though. Get things rolling independently, will we? I couldn't help but laugh at it. How much we're strapped for cash. What I meant was, so we get creative. We got up at the crack of dawn every day and built a company from the bottom up, an import distributor of high-quality, environmentally friendly water sports equipment that Ryan had tried out in contests. Our combined funds barely covered rent, and neither of us had a bachelor's degree in business. We were both in our 20s, and I thought it was ridiculous. But we were hungry and had trust in it. In addition to my night employment as a college janitor and 2 extra shifts at the cafe, Ryan was lent $5,000 by his uncle. We survived on uncooked rice, unsweetened coffee, and unshakable faith. The first place we called home was a little apartment that was above a laundromat. The building shook with every spin cycle of the dryers. Our shared office space consisted of 2 cinder block desks and a door that we had saved from the curb. "This is the starting line," Ryan said that first night as he opened a bottle of sparkling wine, a purchase that cost him $4. "Why don't we make it count?" We would be ignored by everyone. "You're not old enough. Nobody knows who you are. Return once you have actual figures." Still, we kept going, making appearances at tournaments, trade shows, ports, and wherever else we could get our hands on an audience. We spoke to wholesalers, mom-and-pop businesses, and sportsmen. and our own blood, sweat, and tails went into building our brand. Then came the break. At a Florida coastal sports show, we crossed paths with a small family-run Australian company that was looking to get into the American market. They were as forthright and combative as we were, and our connection was immediate. They tested us out. A contract with a single West Coast distributor. It caught us off guard. We slept through it all that night in our tight apartment, where we clapped and wept to music and could hear our dreams more clearly than before. Making progress, although at a snail's pace, was the norm thereafter. Amanda, who arrived with a neon pink paper resume, became our operations manager after being employed as our first part-time assistant. We reinvest every dime. Our product selection expanded. We moved out of our cramped apartment after just 3 years and into a real warehouse. Our logo was recognized in a niche sports magazine, and we were the official logo for several local beach events. While we went unnoticed in the corporate world, we were making a difference in our tiny corner. Following that, we embarked on an impromptu coastal trip one day, just south of Monterey. We could see a home. It was aged and old, sitting on a bluff, partially hidden by wildflowers and old trees. We knew it was beautiful when we saw the water below. "This is the one," Ryan said under his breath as we held hands. There was absolutely no pressure for me to answer. I felt the same way. Every weekend we poured more money into it. We finished painting the front porch, installed solar panels, debated tile possibilities, and worked through plumbing instructions on YouTube. We hand-sanded the floors. Everything there belonged to us. Our disagreements, our laughter, the quiet mornings we enjoy, and the late-night brainstorming sessions. The two of us sat on the back porch that night after spending the day polishing cabinets, sharing a blanket and 2 beers. The stars twinkled in the night sky, while far below the water made a low-volume sound. As I turned to face Ryan, he chimed in with, "Let us age in this place." I was hoping we would. It was more than just a house. It was our home. It was proven. You disproved the notion that having a perfect family or a safety net was essential. All it took to succeed was meeting the right person and having the determination to keep going. But dreams are fragile things. Your loved ones back home will be crushed to watch you fly without them. As soon as the sun began to rise over the Monterey coast, my phone began to ring. After a 10-day business journey throughout Southeast Asia, packed with numerous client meetings, long flights, and hotel rooms, where I slept through many, many nights, I was ready for a weekend of relaxation at the house that Ryan and I had built from the bottom up. I happened to be wearing my pajamas when I spotted the caller ID while the coffee was boiling in the kitchen. My beloved father. Unless it was about Madison, he seldom called me, and I shuddered. I should have sensed something was up from that alone. I was the one to reply, "Hey there, Dad, how's it going?" He then broke the extended silence with a voice that was both tense and trying to seem nonchalant. "Hey, Emily, I think we should have a chat." I could feel it. There was an issue. I don't understand. As if he were about to read from a screenplay, he cleared his throat. "It's the beach house I'm saying. It broke my heart. Does that ring a bell?" The next statement totally caught me off guard, so here we go again. The deal has already been finalized, and next month ownership will be transferred. I blinked because I failed to grasp it. Is it gone? Your words elude me. I spoke softly, but you must not take credit for them. Ryan and I feel the same way. Absolutely not. Madison's having another round of problems, he interjected. Get down to brass tacks now. A disastrous business transaction entangled her. More than $200,000 is owed to her. If we don't do anything to help, debt collectors will. I was momentarily blinded when my body smacked against a chair. Is our house still on the market? Listen, Emily. So without telling us just how not even questionable, I moved from a quivering to an irate voice. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to put the phone on speaker mode so I could keep it steady. It was imperative that we act quickly, he bemoaned. Furthermore, your signature was already on file with us from the first paperwork. We simply utilized the existing documents, they stated. I noticed it too. I felt a sinking feeling the moment I heard the word sold. All of our autographs were fakes. I tightened my jaw grip. The fury rushed upward, feeling powerless. And I said, that's against the law with all my might. That's called deceit. An anxious gasp could be heard on the opposite end of the phone line. We were not intentionally malicious. To put it simply, Madison requires some kind of aid. Your presence there is practically non-existent these days. Emily, you have a sister named her. You seem to think that her life is worth more than a structure. That house isn't just a house. I fired back an angry reaction. Everything that Ryan and I have made is here, and that is our desire and our ownership. You even took it from her again. I could hear my own heartbeat. Our sleep, joy, and memories were shaken, carried, and saved by these same waves, which we could hear crashing just outside our window. Was some random individual going to possess that now? Because Madison erred another time, reason being regardless of how many times she lit things on fire, my parents would never leave her without matches. Say it again. You falsified official documents. I'm notifying the authorities regardless of your explanation. A gasp escaped his lips. Please, Emily, be more mature. This is about the loved ones of someone. No, I said with a distant sense of gravity. Damn, this is illegal. The call stopped suddenly. There was a brief moment when the sound of the wind and my own breathing were the only things I could hear. I will not cry. No, not just now. There was too much rage to hold back tears. I called the police and a lawyer within the hour. We photographed and sent them the actual documents, including the one with Ryan's and my signatures, which were different from the ones used in the fake sale agreement. Ryan wasted no time getting home that day after he left the office. He clenched his jaw and had a pale face. His claim was that he had spoken with the buyers. One of them turned out to be a college classmate of mine, I discovered. He received all the information. He stated they had second thoughts because of your father's story and the sale's seeming hurry. Truly, they failed miserably. I sighed with relief, on the verge of passing out. It's far from over, he explained. Law enforcement is now involved. An investigation of your parents' behavior is underway. That night, we forewent supper. We sat on the balcony, hands interlocked, and stared at the sea as if it had the solution to all our troubles. But other than quieting things down, it didn't do anything useful. The investigation moved along quickly. Within days, the authorities uncovered bank transfers, forgeries of notary stamps, and fabricated signatures. Rumor has it that my mom lied to our neighbors and said that Ryan and I were going to sell our house quickly since we were intending to relocate abroad. They're in trouble. Our attorney stated, his voice betraying his concern. Everything was planned out with meticulous attention to detail, so I didn't act on impulse. Because answering would be too difficult for me, I choose not to, for the simple reason that my folks weren't just trying to break into our home. even though I thought they still appreciated my independence job and connection with Ryan, they had ignored all of it. They were ready to destroy it all. With respect to Madison, even that was unsurprising to her. Finally, she called out to him, but this time it was to shout. "I think that disgusting. You lack heart," she cried out in frustration. "Our parents should be reported to the police." I remained silent during my reply. All I did was whisper, "They wanted to break into our residence, which is against the law. But I am the one, Emily. I am about to perish over here. Please lend me a hand." When I finished saying, "Then get a swimming lesson," I hung up. What followed were really trying days. I found out that Madison had racked up a lot of debt, more than we knew about. Using a student loan, she bought designer purses. Her tuition fund was exhausted by weekend trips to Sin City. An ex-boyfriend who talked her into investing in cryptocurrencies when she didn't need to. Each time my parents stepped in, I was successful, and plenty of care was lavished upon her. I told her she was too soft for it, and that life was hard. They always reminded me to be strong, to settle, so that I could take care of her while they were out. Everything that Ryan and I had built was nearly destroyed by this time. That was the end of it. I ignored my mother's cries when she phoned. Even though my dad begged me to reconsider, in long emails I chose to disregard his messages. Despite the "we're sorry" written on the envelope they sent me, I choose to disregard it. I went to the police with everything. Turning a blind eye is not an act of love, period. You can't love someone and yet respect their authority just because you're part of a family. Love is not it. We refer to that as quitting. I had also ceased bleeding. Ignore the betrayal. That was the simple part. Seeing that no one else thought it was bad was the hardest part. A week later, my parents were reported, and my phone became a battleground. An overwhelming number of calls began to ring my phone from long-lost relatives, attempting to get me to dismiss the charges by using their distressed voices and insincere expressions of sympathy. "Emily, these are your parents. All they wanted to do was assist your sister. Are you serious? Is suing your family really on the horizon for you?" The same sentence kept popping up, as if it were a curse. "You've been here longer. You should be able to understand." That seemed to me to be the meat and potatoes of it. Throughout my whole existence, people had been urging me to comprehend, to sacrifice, in order to assume leadership, keeping quiet. No one, however, ever tried to help Madison understand it. Nobody paid attention to her regrets. She couldn't even muster an act of regret. Even though the police had formally begun an inquiry 3 days prior, she instead contacted me over Instagram. Concise description: "You ruined it all. May you be brimming with joy." Nobody responded to it. Despite this, I read it several times. Even now, she has no idea what she destroyed, because she had never built anything before. As Madison gracefully glided through life, I managed 3 jobs, attended night school, and rebuilt her future from the ground up. Madison's parents were there to support her through every setback. They had depleted their retirement money paying off her credit cards. We were able to pay off Grandpa's bankrupt Etsy store by purchasing the remaining plot of property from her. On top of that, they tried to steal from me earlier. I can well remember the scene the police investigator was filling me in on the specifics while I stood in the corridor of the warehouse office, panting profusely, holding the phone. Months of preparation went into this, and both your signature and Ryan's signature were forgeries. The house was immaculate. They deceived the real estate agent into thinking you two were relocating abroad. A dryness washed across my mouth. Countless weeks, while I was in Bali, Indonesia, making speeches at panels on environmental sustainability and coordinating product displays, my parents were plotting to have me removed from my life entirely. The fact that they didn't see it in that context is much worse. The detective added something else. While we were being interrogated, my mom broke down in tears. It wasn't because of anything she did, but rather because she was worried about how things would look to other people. Madison is never aided by Emily. Emily is cold and uncaring. All of a sudden she changes. She said they were forced to do it. She was spot on in her evaluation. I went through a change. I stopped believing it when I learned that love included allowing oneself to be hurt over and over again. Despite my previous belief, I now know that silence is strength. More than that, I stopped behaving like my family status gave me any sort of advantage. That, however, did little to alleviate the complexity. One night, after a long day at work, I encountered her while grocery shopping. This lady is my mother, located in the frozen food aisle of a discount supermarket. A mess of dented cans, stale bread, and peeling clearance labels made up her basket. It took her a minute to see me. She looked thinner than I remembered, and her posture was slouched. It didn't take long for our stares to transform her expression from astonished to embarrassed. Subsequently, she looked away silently and rapidly, as if I were to blame for all that had happened. We didn't go after her. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights, I stood paralyzed with my heart racing. To me, it was crucial to feel vindicated. However, I was simply worn out. Madison emailed me shortly thereafter, something as basic as a subject line. "Oh, please." Her notes included, "I see where I went wrong. By contrast, I may benefit from some guidance. I am about to perish over here. Lending me $50,000 is the only way I can persuade you that I can resolve this. At last, I've found my chance. Okay, Emily, you are the only one who knows me. Apologies are not necessary. Absolutely no one claims ownership of it. Just one more item, please." She asked me to put out a fire again. My email was not accessible, hung on to the apple. Moreover, she was given a list of nonprofits that provide services such as debt counseling, financial education, and rehabilitation. The next thing I knew, I was blocking her. That night, Ryan found me on the deck, my fingers numb from looking out at the water. He remained utterly silent at first. He sat down next to me and put a blanket over my shoulders in a very casual manner, lastly whispering, "The consequences of their choices will no longer affect you." After much hesitance, I gave in and believed him. The police case became public knowledge 3 weeks later. Retired couple under investigation for forgery fraud in property scheme involving daughter. A local news station took up the story. Reading the news made me feel quite nauseous. The reason behind this is not that they were incorrect, but rather that there was a noticeable lack of coherence. There were others besides my family now. Quite a spectacle that was. I received several unpleasant texts from distant cousins. Not even one person wrote, "Why didn't you just let it go? What's the price of a house? Is that all? Just one house?" It was in the kitchen at that house at 3 o'clock in the morning that Ryan and I discussed the future of our business. On Christmas morning, it was customary to make fun of overdone pancakes. When my first international shipment was canceled, Ryan built a fort for me out of beach towels, and I grieved here. In that residence, we found evidence. With that, it was done. We were never going to be the people they said we would be. As if it were irrelevant, they tried to erase it. Yes, I simply could not release it. My family received their punishments 6 months later. They will not be subjected to any more penalty and will not be jailed. A permanent mark on their documents and a stain on our family tree. I never read their post-sentencing apologies. I disposed of them without even opening a single one. Sometimes forgiving someone doesn't make things better. There are instances when repeat criminals may see it as a way out. On top of that, I was sick of leading them through it. Subtle but devastating was the fallout. Someone purchased their home. My father was a night shift security guard at a parking lot. My mom worked 3 jobs a cashier during the day, packing in a warehouse in the morning, and a 24-hour cafe at night, all for very little money. People in the area were chatting. She looks incredibly slimmer now. I heard they're down in a little apartment close to Salinas now. There was no change to Madison. She allegedly started meeting a man from the nightclub scene and brazenly announced to everyone that she had discovered another investment opportunity that would definitely be profitable, according to a former acquaintance of hers. She didn't alter at all. My folks on the other side were similarly clueless. Their response to her calls persisted. They kept attempting to save up their meager funds. Using the same tired justification for her negligence, "She needs us," we responded, even though Emily is stronger than her. Their influence stunted her development, and I doubt they ever grasped the gravity of the situation. They called it love. It was poisonous, though, stunningly gentle and pleasant. Ryan and I took a step back and watched. On occasion during the evenings, I would sit quietly, staring out the window, while I attempted to comprehend everything that had transpired. "You could feel it, Ryan." He would sit down with a glass of wine and pour me a glass in silence, and then he would just be. People no longer talked about them often. Simply put, I hadn't completely lost faith. Something deeper had slipped away from me. That excrement stood for safety was the idea. The primary concern of parents was ensuring their children's safety. Family defined a house. I had become fond of the tale. Additionally, the agony was unbearable. It also liberated me. When you stop hoping other people would transform into their perfect selves and start doing the same, you may find that you have more energy and enthusiasm to enjoy life to the fullest. With the final straw, there was hardly a thud. It was a single phrase in an email that I almost deleted. "I can turn things around if you give me $50,000, Margaret." No one ever asked how I was doing. She said nothing. This is just another desperate request from a sister who thought everyone should come to her rescue. I have no regrets and am not sorry. Sadly, at this time, everything had disappeared. Madison had squandered my parents' retirement funds, life savings, health, and reputation, leaving me with practically little that was rightfully mine. With this, she reasoned the cycle could continue indefinitely, and I would be the safety net that followed. Simply being the net was sufficient for me. The room was a continual reminder of the person I had become, not because of them, but because of them. As I sat alone at my desk in the office that Ryan and I had built from the bottom up, I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity. Light streaming in through the window, shadows dancing across the wooden floor where we had sat. Madison, on the other hand, had changed absolutely nothing. That one from recently, her investment in a string of itinerant speakeasies scattered around the Southwest, was convinced by a nightclub promoter called Vince, according to one of Ryan's townmates. She was still jumping from one guy to another, job to job and tale to story. She believed him, of course. The crypto man had her similar level of trust, a skincare MLM, the program for mentorship by influential professionals. Bankruptcy was filed by the 3-week-old travel blog agency. My folks would dash over to her aid whenever she was in danger. Whatever the case may be, that is contingent upon the outcome of the case. My mother, who was still stumbling her way from the warehouse to the cafe like a ghost, was juggling her triple job routine, while my father, who is nearly 70 years old, works endless security night shifts, according to a neighbor. Their bodies were exhausted. Still, he hasn't let go of Madison. Her case is still ongoing. Mom told a relative she's making an effort. All she needs is a break. This happened when they were grocery shopping. It was just thought that I would be fine, and no one has ever said anything like that about me. Business was slow, and they didn't even try to get in touch. Was too busy to make sure I was getting enough sleep. Beyond the obvious financial and time investments, I failed to assess if the case had any additional costs. Even though the pieces were cutting into them and making them bleed, my parents continued to dig into Madison's debris for almost a decade, attempting to save what little of her life she had never tried to fix. It would have been everyone's dream if I had stepped in. Someone from the family got in touch with me. They wrote me a note. It was like ghosts from long ago family reunions showing up in my inbox. Emily, they're in pain. You control the resources. Please for once give them a hand. Is that all? I had previously given them a lot more than was reasonable. I allowed them to stay silent because they ignored me. I accepted their choice when they showed bias. For a long period, I displayed unfaltering patience in spite of my inner anguish. This time around, I did my best to establish boundaries. I responded to Madison's email with a single message. No, if you need help, you should talk to an expert. I've mentioned a few here. Then I compiled a list of resources for anyone struggling with money management and mental health. I proceeded to send the message. The next thing I knew, I was blocking her. It wasn't pride but anger that was making my chest hurt, and it wasn't only because of the things I'd lost. Still, there was a part of me that held on to the possibility that things may work out differently. My mother had died between our final meeting in that grocery aisle and the courts. Several days later, my Aunt Dad's older sister left me a message. I let it go to spam, but I read the transcription. He was working too hard and passed out while on the job. He's well now, but this is a major problem. Do you not care? Sitting there with my phone face down on the table, stewing over that message, I felt like I was sitting there for hours. I couldn't face the burden of being responsible for other people's decisions, no matter how important they were to them. I was making tea in the kitchen the night after when Ryan found me shaking violently. He didn't ask any questions whatsoever. All he did was hug me and whisper, "No matter what you choose, I will support you." It was then that it hit me. I simply could not go back. After a while, the texts stopped coming and the calls died down, and then everything changed. But it wasn't silent either. It was heavy. There was a great quietness following a funeral. It wasn't for someone in particular, but for the connection I'd battled so fiercely to keep alive. On occasion, I wondered if it was appropriate to feel guilty about it, especially if people saw my decision to withdraw as emotionally detached. But shame is multifaceted. If you've come to believe that your purpose in this story is to suffer through it all, it might even make you feel loved. My heart wasn't hard. I was relieved. Part of becoming well was letting go. Avoidance of more dishonesty. Please less interference. Being the emotional dumping ground for a family that was only ever there when they needed them is definitely not something I desire. After months apart, Ryan and I made it back to the beach home that winter. The air was so dry and crisp that you could see your breath through the clouds. We built a fire, melted some chocolate, and put on some record music. I took a long breath after what felt like an age. We continued to stand on the back patio and gaze at the water, regardless of how chaotic everything else became. "So how are you doing?" Ryan wants to know. It was my turn to nod. "Now I'm feeling better than I have in a while." He reached out to touch my hand. "You know we built this. Not those individuals, no one else, just us. And no one can ever take it away from us." Yes, he was right about it. It is possible for the mansion to set the outer world ablaze, but here on this cliff, in the quiet of the salty air, I felt safe. You lost everything before you realized that family isn't something you're born into. What you do is entirely up to you. I choose peace and quiet. Truth be told, I made the decision. On my own, I decided. I didn't see a bright future for either my parents or Madison. On the other hand, I knew about this as well. No longer would I be a part of the cycle. It wasn't that I was uncaring toward them. Still, it was because my sense of self-worth grew. Come here quietly. End of story. That was one possible ending. But when all eyes are on you, your pain might seem like a tsunami. Out of the blue, the initial new development transpired. A crimson-cheeked and wrinkled Ryan stormed into my office at the crack of dawn one morning, clutching a phone. "Emily, have you seen this?" When I took the phone out of his hand, it was playing a TikTok video, and a lady whose face I couldn't identify was gazing into the camera with an expression that was halfway between sympathy and scorn. Whatever her parents did, it seems heartless to me, because she apparently went to the police on them when they were in their golden years. For a home, I gestured and blinked. The comments section was packed with assumptions and vague morals. Holy cow, are you spoiled? Honestly, I doubt that house belonged to her. Relatives from long ago, your betrayal is despicable. There were thousands of views, thousands of people. Videos of people replying, stitching, and guessing began to pop up online in greater numbers. What started out as an intimate story became public knowledge when it went viral on the internet. Despite not knowing my identity, they were all too eager to make a judgment. Reading the comments made me feel like I was reading a fictional account of my life written by total strangers. I was overcome with worry. "This isn't real," I said. "I am unknown to them." Nonetheless, it made no difference. No one on social media waited for facts. Its mainstay was the dramatic tension. Following the public outrage on social media, a local journalist contacted me to set up an interview. It was unnoticed by me at first. If it disappeared, that would be better. But being quiet has never benefited me, and it certainly won't now. I chose to document it in writing. I sat down at my computer and composed a letter explaining my views and opinions honestly, without becoming angry or defensive. Honestly, I feel compelled to mention it. I was the one who uploaded it to the corporate website. Soon after, we started incorporating it into our social media updates. Because I hate them so much, my parents are the reason I didn't tell the police about them. I felt compelled to do it, since my house, which my love and I had constructed, was sold using my forgeried signature. Defending your peace is often vital to protect your property, reputation, and dignity, even if the threat comes from people who raised you. If we are afraid that expressing our feelings will make us seem heartless, Maybe we have all been told that being silent is a kind of love. Still, I've learned my lesson these days. Also, I am quite okay with drawing a line. What came after that, quite hefty? A flood of texts came in, from friends and family to total strangers. Those whose family members had used them, manipulated them, and buried their voices in the guise of love. Women reported feeling heard by the authors. A lot of guys admitted to have cried. A girl said, "Listening to your story empowered me to finally reject my mom's requests." At last, the realization that this was not an exception came to me. It was ours. As for those of us who were told to keep quiet, for the sake of consistency, keeping our cool despite the agony. Immediately upon it occurring, a portion of my identity shifted. I emerged from my hiding place. However, Ryan proposed the second twist. March had almost come to a close. Coastal areas were starting to feel the warmth of spring as the weather warmed up a bit. Returning home from a meeting, he tossed his keys into the basin at the front door and blurted out, "Thoughts have been brewing." Out of my computer, I looked up. Oh no. The air was filled with his laughing. What if the doors were left open? Is this just another case involving the law? To what end? And no, he gave her the news. Towards a better future, a power beyond our own. Sitting down next to me, his voice was calm and confident. Imagine if this place could hold more than just the memories we've always said it could. Imagine if it became a gathering place for overlooked youths, for those who were never given a chance, a voice, or any form of acknowledgement. As I stared at him, a beautiful pain crept into my heart. For example, a vacation. It was like a haven, he said. They are taught surfing by us. They realize that the seas are their ally. We show them what they are capable of by believing in them. The idea ignited a fire within me. An innovative interpretation. A number of local NGOs were approached. I made a basic application. I designed a summer program prototype that took 12 disadvantaged kids on an incredible journey for a whole week. As the first wave of vans rolled in, I watched from the porch. As they stepped into unfamiliar terrain, I noticed nervous looks and unsure steps. It came to me that I was that girl as well, feeling frightened, arrive here in silence, totally unnoticeable, until someone grasped my hand and said, "This is your place." A lovely feeling of disarray pervaded that week, along with boards under arms and laughing that echoed into the night. Jaguari was the most striking of the females. During the initial 2 days, she remained very quiet. On the third morning, though, I found her sitting alone on the terrace, staring out over the lake. So I asked, "So you wind up surfing?" Shaking her head, she voiced her objection. Scared to death. Joy spread across my face. Just like the first time I thought I was going to drown here. Shuddering, she complied. Then who is it? Oh, I get it. Regardless, someone believed I could handle it. I certainly did. It was that afternoon when she first climbed on her board. Quite erratic. It blew my mind. Glorious. I sobbed, due to the fact that this represented the outward sign of recovery. The days of judgment are over, despite the noise. We can better offer people a second chance when we've given ourselves one. Our show's title is Wave Back. Someone should have told me about this a lot sooner. It is entirely up to you how you choose to spend the remainder of your life. Go ahead and get on. Make a decision. Feel free to wave back. That summer, we finally got the beach home of our dreams. Some even started to yearn for it. By the way, this is the first, as if everything were in its rightful spot. The waves don't even bother to ask who you are before they start taking you down. Nobody cares if you were the most adored or the most ignored child in the class. They couldn't care less about your upbringing, whether it was a loving, neglected, complimented, or disregarded one. No one will look down on you if you try to get up while raw and shaky. Just be yourself. They test you thoroughly as well. The water taught me that, staying steady instead than being brave. In order to get back up after the accident, not to avoid falling. That is in many ways the story's main point. I used to think that shrinking was the only way to stay alive, possessing virtue, not saying a word, hidden from view. I foolishly thought that if I was enough, if I kept my presence low enough, I might earn Madison's amount of love by just being myself. On the other hand, that sort of love a complete non-event. Restrictions were attached to it, quite sensitive, except if I sacrifice my life for it. Prior to this, I had never done anything like this to protect Ryan, our business, our home, and our peace and quiet. Personally, I rescued myself. That decision has taken away all the things I held dear about family. However, that did lead to one more thing: freedom. I don't think you'd find anything like that in a self-help book. Those who do harm, the type that startle you at 3 o'clock in the morning, the kind that gives you more strength than you ever imagined you were capable of. As our program Waveback grew over the past year, I had the opportunity to meet other kids who were just like me, arrive here in silence, observe caution, carrying more weight than their age should allow. One afternoon, as he was drying off his board, a 12-year-old boy called Malik, who had been unusually quiet all week, asked me, "Have you maintained contact with your parents?" Then I came to a stop. After that, I spoke honestly. "Oh no. On top of that, I doubt I will ever do it again." He looked away for an instant. Afterwards, they mumbled, "I also avoid communicating with mine." As I nodded, my pulse raced. "That doesn't mean you're mentally unstable." I told him to comfort him. It all boils down to the opportunity to create something fresh. I can't possibly understand that truth unless I feel it firsthand. Your peace and quiet is not a right of anybody else. None of your relatives or friends, especially not those closest to you if they jeopardize your peace for their personal gain. Forgiveness is often thought of as the pinnacle of virtues. On rare occasions, though, forgiving someone is only a cover-up. Not every situation calls for forgiveness. We may now proceed with the release, to let go, so that I may stop being helpful, to keep pushing forward even when no one else does because you have trust that you are permitted to. That has always baffled my parents. Whatever the case may be, even after they'd lost everything. To them, love meant dominance even now. With their backing for Madison one more time, they hoped she could turn things around. Love, on the other hand, isn't apathy, it is sabotaging. Additionally, I will not stop sabotaging my own progress. Ryan and I are still here, and the house they tried to seize is still our home. However, these days, it's about more than just the outside. There it is at a school, place of origin. Those who were never lucky enough to set foot in one can find it here. Children in need are welcomed each season, whether they are from foster care, a shelter, or a case where no one has any idea where the missing child may be. Instead of being terrified of the waves, they learn to ride them. The capacity to trip, throw up, then get back up again after being swallowed. Seeing one of them get back on their feet makes me feel better since I've been there. Not during surfing, but in life. Yes, it was imperfect. The ball slipped out of my hands. I spoke out about my own uncertainties. I was about to die from the agony of humiliation. but instead of drowning, I narrowly avoided it. That is why it matters. On occasion, I enjoy relaxing with a cup of coffee on the back porch while staring out at the faraway horizon. This isn't because I'm looking forward to anything. On the contrary, I already have all I need. Amidst calmness, amidst the quiet, in the room I built specifically for myself, one more thing to the girl who can't stop thinking about how much they're enough, to the guy who's healing from a mother who never apologized, and to the woman who's staying up late in her dorm. This is it. Declining is just okay with me. Draw a line if that suits you better. Protecting your light may require you to stand alone in the dark for a minute. Because recovery is possible, I can hear it clearly. This is not a movie. Other ways of tying things up exist. However, it is authentic. Things begin to unravel the moment you cease assisting those who persist in refusing to change. On the contrary, you need to start rebuilding your life. I am so placed in this predicament, missing some details as fairy tales often assert. However, honestly, as an added bonus, it costs nothing. Finally, all for myself.